there anything stuck in my teeth? Hmm? Hmm? We'd obviously thought long and hard about and worried somewhat about whether we'd find the workflow working on this sort of digital project when you haven't got a tape-based system, difficult to manage. The important thing for us was to always remember that no matter how expensive the camera kit and the rig was, this is the most valuable part of anybody's kit. So whatever you store it on, whatever you capture those once-in-a-lifetime shots on that you can never get back or get that take back again, these are the most valuable bits of the kit because they're very small. I mean, you know, in the old days, you know, you film big canisters of film, you're not as easy to lose. Very fast cards, you can see 90 megabits a second on there. You can get 60s, but we thought it was safe to go for the 90s. Never had an issue on those. Every file wrote in any conditions. It was very cold into very warm, humid conditions. Didn't seem to matter. Pretty robust.
Scene 27, take 2, action.
It fits an awful lot of footage on, and it's an awful lot you can potentially lose at any one time. The important thing is to get a good workflow system in place. So at the end of a day, or even twice a day, we take this, back it up to a hard drive, and then back that hard drive up. So we always had two physical, once it was off this card, there were always two physical copies of that footage at all times. The other thing we did overnight was, as soon as we backed up the files, I'd take them upstairs to our edit system, take the portable hard drive, and then batch process them in compressor to ProRes, Apple ProRes files. With that workflow system, basically by the beginning of every following day, we'd have editable files ready to look at or ready to do a test edit of the previous day's shoot. Good insurance policy might get some of this back. A good insurance policy might not get a performance back. Well, sound recording, obviously, anybody that's been reading up about the Canon knows that there were issues with manual level recordings prior to the firmware update. So the second firmware update, after the firmware update, that didn't, you know the thing, it didn't work properly. But anyway, now that it's in place without third-party firmware or software, you can have manual audio levels. The inbuilt microphone on the camera is fine for what we needed, which was basically to help us sync up what we were shooting to our sound recorders, who was recording on, I think, a Zoom digital recorder. The issues came about because, unfortunately, the Zoom recorder date and time weren't set to the same date and time as this. We did slate most of it, which was fine, which really helped, but it would have been much easier to have every single file matched up in date and time. We could have just linked them all together. That said, you can stick a Beats box or a similar device that will enable you to convert from your balanced input from your microphones into the Canon's mini jack input on the side. And where you go, you've got manual recording levels now, so that's fine. One issue we did find, which is quite interesting, off the internal mic, some really, really weird noises as soon as we put the longer lenses on, probably because of the autofocus system or the image stabilizer system. It sounded like some distant waterfall or some grating noise all the time, but we weren't intending to use the on-body sound anyway, so it didn't really matter too much. The Z-Finder or the Z-Finder means that you can push that camera and the viewfinder up to your eye and actually hold it close to your eye, whereas at the moment, obviously, to view that, you have to hold it a certain distance away. It's got a diopter in it, so you can adjust it for your eyesight, and it works great. And also magnifies the image, so you can see it in check focus. Followed the instructions as per the instructions, and unfortunately it didn't stick, so it came off within a few minutes. So I'm getting a couple more mounts for it, and hopefully that will solve the problem, and I'll try it one more time. I think what may have happened is because I protect the Canon monitor with a screen protector on it, I think possibly the residue from that screen protector there didn't allow the adhesive to take. So I may have to clean that more thoroughly before we try it again. But the other thing that we did find with the focus is how quick it is to just select this little button here. I'll switch that on a second. And to check focus, what we do is, if you don't have that Z finder on, is you can, let me just get that, open the iris all the way up. If you, let me just whack that up as well for you. So to focus, although you got a really clear sharp viewfinder there, monitor there, it's always best to check your focus. So we can focus it approximately there. Press this little button here, the image is zoomed in electronically, and it makes for great focusing. You can press it again and you zoom in even further. Really clear, sharp image, focus it. Press the button again and you're back out to normal view, you know you're in focus. One thing that we wanted to do is obviously keep as shallow a depth of field as possible. So on this 50mm lens here, we've got it at f1.4, which we try to keep it on or near as damn it for most of the time. So a lot of the time we spent adjusting the ISO, which is the sort of digital equivalent of what the film cameras do, which is a sort of gain. Obviously we wanted to keep that as low as possible as well, but what we did find is it was too easy sometimes to slip out of that mode by mistake, and then as soon as you're back on the same control, you can control the ISO after pressing the ISO button by this wheel here, but press it again and then you're under the shutter speed, and a couple of times we knocked the shutter speed off 50. And if you knock it off 50th of a second, of course, in our part of the world, suddenly all our lights become a bit stroby because it's running at the wrong shutter speed. You must keep that set to 50th of a second, or multiples of 50. I think 100, which should be okay. 100th of a second to match the frequency of our electricity supply, which affects the lighting. So 50th of a second, 100th of a second is fine, but we try to keep it at 50th all the time, but be very careful you don't accidentally knock that. Always double check your shutter speed, especially in indoor lights, because you may not notice it on the shoot. You get back, check it out, and you go, oh dear, why does it look like some cheap 70s disco? We were discussing today, actually had a meeting and just discussing where we would have been right now had we have rented in a red kit, which I really want to do. I'd love to shoot on red, and I'd like to see exactly what else I'm going to get out of a red kit that I'm not going to get out of this. I think part of it will obviously be a 4K sensor or 4K images that will keep the resolution a lot further down the line, and also the fact that it shoots to a proprietary format rather than H.264, which is a little bit, well, not that lossy, but it is a bit lossy. So there's a few things I'd like to find out with the red, but of course the benefits of actually owning this kit for about the same price as the rental of the kit that we were looking at means that a few weeks down the line from finishing what we thought was going to be the end of principal photography, we're now able to pick up a shot that we really need with a minimal amount of fuss, minimal crew, which will make a huge difference to part of the story. It's remarkable really, and you know, as time goes by, we're all watching what's going on with other users of this product and the number of projects that are being now shot on this. It's incredible. There are limitations with whichever product you would buy, and this is no different. But what I would say is bang for buck, or whatever crappy expression you want to use, it's extremely good value for money. I paid 12.5 grand for my lovely, still have my DSR 570 broadcast camera, but I really don't want to put this one down. I don't want to go back from this camera to using non-HD and non-shallow depth of field products. It's just got so much control and it's such a joy to use. And the Zacuto kit, you know, I've used this now handheld, I've used it on sticks, I've used it on that glide track, I've used it on Steadicam, and no regrets at all. Just wish the Canon had released that firmware about 2 months earlier so we could have shot in 24 or 25p as opposed to in 30p. But never mind, I'll forgive them because it's a great product.
Quiet and action.